When one has lived a long time alone. Poem in 10 parts by Galway Kinnell. When one has lived a long time alone, one refrains from swatting the fly and lets him go. And one is slow to strike the mosquito, though more than willing to slap the flesh under her. And one hoists the toad from the pit too deep to hop out of, and carries him to the grass without minding the poisoned urine he slicks his body with. And one envelops in a towel the swift who fell down the chimney and knocks herself against window glass, and releases her outside and watches her fly free, a lifeline flung at reality. When one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone, one grabs the snake behind the head and holds him until he stops trying to stick the orange tongue, which forks at the end into black filaments and flashes out like a fire eater's breaths, and bears little resemblance to the pimpled pink lump that mostly dozes inside the human mouth into one's flesh, and clamps it between his jaws, letting the gaudy tip show, as children do when concentrating, and as very likely one does oneself without knowing it when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone among regrets so immense the past occupies nearly all the room there is in consciousness, one notices in the snake's eyes, which see behind without giving any less attention to the future, the opaque, milky blue cloudiness that comes when the snake is about to throw its skin and become new, meanwhile continuing, of course, to grow old. The same blue passé that bleaches the corneas of the blue-eyed when they lie back at the end and look for heaven, a fading one suspects means they don't find it when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone, one falls to poring upon a creature, contrasting its eternity's face to one's own, full of hours, taking note of the differences, exaggerating them, making them everything, until the other is utterly other, and then, with hard effort, probably with tongue sticking out, going over each difference again, and this time canceling it until nothing is left but likeness, and suddenly oneness, and minutes later, one starts awake, taken aback at how unresistingly one drops off into the bliss of kinship when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone and listens at morning to mourning doves sound their Kyrie, eleison, or to the small things spiritualizing upon a twig cry, Pewit, Phoebe? Or to grasshoppers scratch their thighs as need fire awake, or to Peabody birds at midday send their schoolboys' whistlings across the field, and at dusk their undamped chinks, as from marble cutters' chisels, or at nightfall to pollywogs just rearranged into frogs raise their Ave Verum Corpus, listens to those who hop or fly, call down upon us the mercy of other tongues. One hears them as inner voices when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone, one knows that consciousness consummates, and as the most self-conscious among these uttering their seemingly compulsory cries, the least flycatcher witching up, Chebec, or red-headed woodpecker clanging out his tunes from a metal roof gutter, or ruffed grouse drumming thrum, thrum, thrump, 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 rup, 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 deep in the woods. All of them in times unfolding, trying to cry themselves into self-knowing. One knows one is here to hear them into shining when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone, one likes alike the pig, who brooks no deferment or gratification, and the porcupine or thorn pig who enters the cellar but not the house itself, because of eating down the cellar stairs on the way up. And one likes the worm, who by bunching herself together and expanding works her way through the ground, no less than the butterfly, who totters full of worry among the daylilies as they darken, and more one finds one likes any other species better than one's own, which has gone amok, making one self-estranged when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone, sour, misanthropic, one fits to one's defiance the satanic boast, it is better to reign in hell than to submit on earth, and forgets one's kind, the way by now the snake does, who stops trying to get to the floor and lingers all across one's body, slumping into its contours, adopting its temperature, and abandons hope of the sweetness of friendship or love. Before long can barely remember what they are and covets the stillness of inorganic matter in a self-delusion one may not know how to halt when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone and the hermit thrush calls and there is an answer, and the bullfrog head half out of water utters the cantilations he sang in his first spring, and the snake lowers himself over the threshold and creeps away among the stones, one sees they all live to mate with their kind, and one knows after a long time of solitude, after the many steps taken away from one's kind toward these other kingdoms, the hard prayer inside one's own singing is to come back, if one can, to one's own, a world almost lost in the exile that deepens when one has lived a long time alone. When one has lived a long time alone, one wants to live again among men and women, to return to that place where one's ties with the human broke, where the disquiet of death and now also of history glimmers its firelight on faces, where the gaze of the new baby meets the gaze of the great granny, and where lovers speak on lips blowsy from kissing, that language the same in each mouth, and like birds at daybreak blether the song that is both earth's and heaven's, until the sun rises and they stand in the daylight of being made one. Kingdom come, when one has lived a long time alone. I'm Tom Blamain. See ya.